Avalanche podcast. In today's episode, we're just going to be going over some of our favorite prospects in the CHL. And we broke this up, so today we're going to be doing some CHL prospects. On Monday, we will talk Euros, NCAA, USHL, just the rest of the world. There were a lot of Canadians, so we figured they'd get their own episode. I will say, we talked a little bit about this off air. There's a little bit of a lull in the CHL prospects right in those mid-20s. So we have 7 or 8 guys we'll be talking about today, and really it feels like most of them will be gone by the time the Avs pick, and the rest of them will feel a little bit like reaches at their spots. But they are all definitely still reasonable possibilities to be drafted in Colorado's range. So let's just kick it right off. I'll just ask both of you to start. Of the guys in the CHL, who is your favorite prospect?
All right.
For
okay, go ahead, Marshall.
Go ahead, Zach. Well, I was just going to say Alexis Lafreniere.
Of the ones we'll be talking about that are in that Colorado's range.
That's funny. So for me, maybe this is a little bit of a defenseman bias. Caden Goulet is probably one of my favorite prospects out of the CHL. He's just a big defenseman. You know, I'll get more into the specifics why I would like the Avalanche to maybe draft him. Yeah, he's just a big defenseman, and I think maybe you can never have too many defensive prospects in your draft pool. Bottom line,
really feels like a perfect fit for what the Avalanche currently need in their system. Yeah, really, the biggest question with him is will he be there?
So,
totally agree.
amongst the guys that we're going to be talking about today, Caden Goulet definitely was ranked high on my list, but he wasn't number one. If we're just talking about prospects, not necessarily a fit, mine was Hendrix Lapierre.
Gotta love him.
We'll definitely go more. What's
Gotta
that?
love him.
Yeah. We'll like I said, we're going to be talking about him more. But unfortunately, his career has, to this point, has kind of been a little bit shadowed by some concussions and spinal injuries, which you don't love out of a top-end prospect. But that's kind of part of the reason that I think he'd be a really nice fit with Colorado, just because of the fact that it's like, at 25, especially in the Avs position that they're in with some really high-end prospects already in the system, might as well kind of take a risk and go for that top-end talent.
Yeah, he's definitely the biggest boom or bust prospect in the pool of CHL kids, which if it weren't for the injuries, there's no way he would fall to 25. He would probably go somewhere between 5 and 15. So it's definitely...
I mean,
you're worried about the injuries, but if you weren't worried about the injuries, he's not a prospect that would be in our range anyway. The injuries are kind of what bring him into Colorado's area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was drafted really high in the CHL, in the Q and JHL draft. He was number one in the Q and JHL draft for a reason. Ever since he was coming up, him and Lafreniere's name has kind of been side by side, kind of growing up, both like Quebec kids. But obviously, Lapierre kind of fell off a little bit. Lafreniere, both of those guys, whatever.
They get confusing.
But, yeah, Lapierre. I mean, he's been a very, very highly regarded prospect ever since he was a kid, and for good reason. He was a stud growing up, and the games that he has played in the QMJHL have been pretty spectacular. His rookie season, he almost put up a point per game, so that's a guy that I would like the Avs to take a risk on if he ends up falling to us. And if he didn't end up getting injured and played his full slate of games in the QMJHL, there's pretty realistic expectations that he could have gone in the top 5.
Yeah, and you love that he's a really high-end prospect. I will say it's a bit of a weird fit for the Avs right now just because he is a center. So you're talking about a guy you want to be a top 6 center, and both of those spots are at least penciled in with McKinnon, Ritten, and Penn, and Alex Newhook expected to take that 2C spot. But, I mean, if you have that much talent, you can bump someone out to the wing. But it is a little
Yeah.
bit of an odd fit just because of that. But still, with that kind of talent, you definitely have to consider taking that risk.
Yeah. So yeah, he was like the first guy that I was thinking about, us discussing just because, like we were throwing out some names to each other and he was the first guy that popped up on the list. So what really stands out, um, about him to you guys, really?
Well, to me, honestly, the injuries scare me. And I know that he's more of a playmaker, but the fact that he's never scored more than 20 goals in any of his seasons, even going back to Bantam and midgets, is kind of worrying if you're looking at a player that wants to make the NHL. Um, by no means is that a knock. You could be a great playmaker and make the NHL. His hands are good. He's great work ethic guy for what I've read. Um, that's just my biggest concern is the injuries.
Yeah.
Really, the 3 concussions are a big
I
concern
think you're
for me.
definitely right about that. There is a little bit of a gray area. They're not sure how many of them were concussions and how many were vertebrae injuries, but regardless, anytime you're talking about a head or neck injury, it's definitely going to worry you. But as far as his play goes, we're talking about an elite playmaker, as in he could be. If you're drafting this guy, you want him. Your hope is that he plays in your top 6 and is a very good player for you in your top 6. This could be a first line guy with that elite playmaking ability. Zach, you touched on it. He's probably never going to be a 30-40 goal scorer, but he could be a guy that puts up 15-20 goals and 50-60 assists. So I
Yeah.
like that high end offensive upside, even if it doesn't necessarily come from goal scoring. Again, though, that is another one where it's a little bit of a weird fit in Colorado just because we got a lot of playmakers. We could use someone that can finish. But as far as just raw talent, this kid has it like crazy. He is easily the most talented player I think that we'll be talking about in either episode, with the possible exception of Rodion Amarov. And even that, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think you got to give the edge to Lapierre. So it's really what sticks out is just the high end talent.
And so even like talking about that, Billy, you were saying at the beginning of the episode, it's like a lot of these guys that we're going to be talking about might not end up being in the Avs range, but at the end of the day, I went through and looked at all of like our prospects, rankings from the big, like the TSN, like the Craig
Yeah.
Button, the future considerations, and kind of put a range to them. And so Lapierre, he went from anywhere. He was rated 10th on Craig Button's list. Not too sure when that came out, but then and then went all the way down to 27. So these are the guys that could potentially be in our range, and there is a universe in which Lapierre does fall to us. It's just whether or not the Avs feel comfortable drafting another guy that has like concussion issues, and especially that we've already seen it from one of the Avs like main prospects right now with Connor Timmins. So there are a lot of question marks, but like you said, Billy, in terms of just pure talent, Lapierre has to
Yeah, he's
be up
easily
there.
up there.
So
And like you said, yeah, so the Avs are kind of in the back end of his range. I wouldn't be shocked to even see him fall out completely out of the
Yeah.
first round. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see him in the second round, depending on how scared teams are. I do think that if I had to make a prediction, I think he goes in the teens, in the late teens. But definitely there is that hope that he falls to Colorado. But let's go ahead and move into one of the next guys I want to talk about. And
Well,
oh,
really
okay, go ahead.
quick, I have a little bit. I have player comparisons.
Ah.
At least I tried to. And my like high end player comparison, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, is a Johnny Huberdeau.
Okay.
For
Huberdeau.
Lapierre, right?
Yeah. This is just on my eye
Yeah.
test, watching like highlights of this guy and just like kind of going through the reins. He looks like a Huberdeau to me. He has like very similar skill set to him. Can skate really well and has some nice hands. So that's my player comparison to him. I'm definitely not an expert on any of this. This is me watching YouTube videos of this guy. But
I think I'd say like a little bit of Mitch Marner to his game as well is another one I like.
a little bit of a bigger guy than Mitch Marner, but yeah, I could
skating,
definitely
the
see that.
passing. I
Yeah,
like it. I like that
yeah,
comparison a little bit. But yeah, I like that. I think Huberdeau is a good comparison there.
yeah. Sorry, but I
Oh,
just thought
no
I'd throw that
worries.
out there.
All right. Let's see. I just lost my track. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is a guy that I like as a fit for Colorado in a lot of ways. Um, as far as forwards go, I think this is about as good a fit as you're going to get, and that is Connor Zary. And he is so good all around, but there isn't
Yeah.
anything that pops off the film for him. He's not special anywhere. He's not a special shooter. He's not a special playmaker. He's not a special anything. But he is a very, very good all around player. All three zones he plays well. And I like his fit in a middle six.
I
I would.
totally agree with you, Billy. To me, this guy is probably one of the safest picks we could do at this spot. To me, this guy is almost a lock to make the NHL at some point in his career. Uh, like you said, though, nothing at all sticks off the board about this guy at all. He's going to be, when he makes the NHL, a bottom six player for sure. And those, have value. And that just, as long as you can add NHL players to your roster, it doesn't matter who you pick, really. And I would not be mad if we pick Zari.
I would kind of tend to disagree with a couple of things that you guys said. I do think that his shot is something that can translate very well in the NHL. I mean, he put up 38 goals this year, which is, pretty substantial, especially in like a 57 game season. So I don't know, that stands out to me a little bit. And I do think, Zach, that Connor Zary can be like a prototypical 2C. Whether or not, though, he would fit with like Colorado with Alex Newhook
You'd have
kind
to
of
bump Newhook
being a
to a
little bit
wing,
more
probably.
talented than him. Yeah, like he is a guy to me that's like, if he's a 3C, he's a 3C on like a very, very good team, like a
If
Tampa
you
Bay or something
if
that
you
just
want to give
has
my
that scene.
comparison for Connor Zary is actually Anthony Cirelli as far as his fit in the Avalanche
Okay.
system. I think he would play a very similar role. It's not a perfect stylistic comparison, but I like it because you're talking about he would be the third center, an elite third line center that probably could be a second line center. And Zach, I know you said you'd
Yeah.
probably see him definitely playing in the bottom six. I do see a world where he is a top six player. I kind of see it the same way I see Martin Kaut, where you're very much expecting him to play on your third line, maybe even fourth line, but there's still that little bit of hope that he does become that true top six player.
And I'll be honest, I had Zari fifth on my list. I also, the Blazers were a great team. They had a great first line, hence why he had inflated stats this year. The the line of players each had 18 points a minimum in 63 games, so that's a stat to watch out for in good CHL teams, obviously. So he's just a little. He's definitely the lowest on my list. I'll just say that.
He made third on my list. But going back to those like rankings, I do think that Zeri is going to be out of our range. All the rankings, he went anywhere from 11 to 25. So the very bottom end of like those rankings is where we'd be picking. Like I said, though, there is a world that he ends up falling to us, and we'd have decisions to make. But to me, he's he's a little bit of in between like a Johnny Tays and a Shane
Okay.
Bowers. If
Yeah,
you can put those
I see
two
what
like
you mean.
right in the middle, like my comparison is a poor man's Johnny Tays to him. A fantastic two-way game. Has been pretty heralded for his leadership abilities. Like could end up being a captain one day on some team down the line. Who knows? But if I were to like put some sort of ceiling on him, it would be kind of a poor man's Johnny Tays, just the way that he plays and the way that he conducts
Yeah,
himself.
and I think you touched on his draft positioning, and I think we're on the same page there. This is another guy I think probably goes before the Avs are up. I think he goes late teens, early 20s. If he is there, this feels like I honestly think it's the pick the Avalanche would make. Just the way they've shown their tendency to draft. This feels really reminiscent of the Martin Kaut pick
Yeah,
to me.
it does. Yeah, if he's there, I think Zary is very high on
Yeah,
Sakic's board.
I definitely think so.
I agree with that.
Okay, so another guy I want to talk about, and this is a guy, Marshall, you have told me that you are a pretty big fan of, Maverick Bork.
This is
All
my
right,
favorite
so I'll
guy.
let you two take it
Yeah.
away here.
Well, first of all, I am a big fan of him, but this is another guy that's just kind of at the tail end of our
Yeah,
like window. I think the rankings were 12 to 22, but this is a guy. If we're talking about hockey IQ, I mean it's off of the charts in my opinion. I do think that like some skating can need a little bit of work, but I mean you can't really argue with his point production and just the way that like he's just kind of an all around player again. Someone that the Avs would be very heralded in
yeah,
picking.
I totally agree. This guy is a top 6 player in my opinion. He's going to get there. He has all the offensive instinct in the world. He creates plays for himself from what I've seen. He can drive plays, and he has, like you said, Marshall, the hockey IQ to be able to dish the puck to the open area. This guy's very high on my list. I do have 2 players above him, just because one, I have a defenseman bias, and 2, the other guy is definitely way better and out of our range. But Maverick Bork, this guy, watch for this guy to lead the the CHL in scoring next year. This guy is for real.
yeah.
He's legit.
He's a very high end prospect, and like you guys have both said, he's probably not falling to 25. I mean, people crater all the time, so it's definitely a possibility, which is why we're going to talk about him. But if there is a top 15 pick that we're going to talk about today, I think Maverick Bork is probably that guy. I think there. You said you've seen him as high as 12 in a lot of rankings, Marshall. I think it's very likely he goes in that 12 to 15 range.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy, I have a pretty interesting comparison
Okay.
for him. I know a guy that you like a lot, in Anthony
I love
Beauvillier.
Anthony Beauvillier, and I do see where you're coming from there. I actually didn't put together a comparison for Maverick Bork myself, but I love that Beauvillier comparison. He's got the skill,
Mm-hmm.
and he has that ability to sometimes score more than you'd think.
Yep, yep. And just a guy that you
Yeah.
trust thrown out there, in all situations. So he was ranked 4th on my list. No knock on him. I just, you know, Lapierre is just my favorite, just all around prospect. And then
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into the other rankings. No knock on Maverick Bork being my 4th, but still a very good prospect that the Avs would be very interested in.
Right, and I just want to add, like, also, I already said it earlier. Watch for this guy to lead the league in scoring next year, and also his defense is definitely a liability, and not that worries me at this point in his career, because older players become better 2-way players, when they age, and he's just not there right now. I'd like to see some more effort on the back end from him. You can see in plays he gives up quite often or just dumps it straight up the boards. And that's not something you really want from your
Yeah.
from your guy, from especially a center who's supposed to be playing defense on the back
Yeah.
end.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, anything else you guys want to say about Maverick Bork before I move in here?
No, nothing
All right,
really for
because
me.
next up we're going to talk about the guy Zach said is his favorite, and honestly, I think is the best fit, and also the most one I'm most unsure of whether or not he makes it to the Avalanche or not, and that's Caden Gooley. He is just about everything the Avalanche are looking for in a prospect. He doesn't necessarily have a ton of offensive upside as a defenseman, but he can be that shutdown defenseman. He could play. He's probably not going to be a top pairing guy, but could definitely be your 4th, or as the Avs would probably use him on your or on your 3rd pairing. He is very, very responsible in his own end. He's a big dude. He can push some guys around if he needs to, and I like Gooley a lot.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he would help a lot on something that the Avs really struggled with in the playoffs, and
Yeah.
that's penalty kill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Caden Gooley definitely comes in on my number one. Maybe that's a defenseman biased because I used to play defense, but also I think he, like you said, Billy, he's just a great fit for the Avs, being that big body defenseman. And he's just a hard guy to beat one on one. Right now, he's listed at 187, and he's easily going to be a 220
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
his
Oh, yeah.
prime. So this guy is going to be a solid man out there, and that's what the Avs need. He's probably, I would say, the second best defenseman in this draft behind Jake Sanderson, but
Over
it
Drysdale?
wouldn't be a bad pick. Ooh, it's close.
Really?
It's
You're not a
close. It's
Drysdale
close.
fan, it sounds
It's
like.
Yeah.
close. No, I'm not. It's close though. I like Goulet a lot. I think he's would be a great if he was able to
Okay.
fall to us.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a bold comparison, but I could see where you're coming from. I'm also not as high on Drysdale as I think a lot of people are, and I am very high on Goulet,
Mhm.
especially as he
Me
fits in
too.
Colorado because I mean, if you just look at Colorado's farm system, Colorado's roster right now, what's the biggest thing that we're lacking? That big, imposing defenseman that can, like Marshall said, do it on the penalty kill because that would be just a massive get for us. Gooley's a guy I could envision us even trading up for if he does slip into the 20s,
Yeah.
and the Avs say, well, all right, 21's on the clock. Let's maybe throw a third or a fourth their way and try and get up and get that guy that we really want because our prospect system starts to look a lot more complete if you put a Caden Gooley in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was anywhere ranked from 14 to 25. Billy, like you said, I definitely think that the Avs would be interested in trading up. A very good comparison for him that I like a lot, actually, maybe my favorite out of any of these prospects on my list is Jacob Slavin.
I like that
Mm-hmm.
comparison
That's
because
all.
I
I've
had the
heard that as
same one.
well. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did you really? I think he models Jacob Slavin's game very, very nicely. And if we were able to get Jacob Slavin play out of Caden Goulet, well, that is a very serious defense with
Yeah.
the high end offense that Cale Makar and Gerard and
That is
Byron might bring
absolutely
up.
like his kind of pipe dream ceiling, but it wouldn't be impossible for him to get there. And I think that
Definitely.
like he's a guy. We talked about it a little bit with Zeri. I think that is a safe pick. I would be very surprised to see him not make the NHL at all.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's a very safe pick. Doesn't necessarily stand out on the offensive side of the puck, but he's very capable of just like moving play and getting the pucks to the right guys. So that's kind of something that you really want out of this type of player.
Yeah. So
Right, and he's no slump either. He did have 40 points.
Yeah.
I just
No,
wanna
absolutely
throw that
not.
out
He's
there.
not like gonna stand out like a like a Cale Makar
Right.
or Sanderson type of guy.
yeah, and he's
Right.
I don't
That's true.
necessarily think that his points are going to translate as well, but there is a good chance that he, if Connor Timmins can't be that fourth guy in our top four, I think Caden Gooley might be him. So I would walk out of the draft with tears of joy if we got Caden Gooley. So it would be a really exciting one. Those are the four guys that we're going to be talking about that I really feel like we'd probably have to move up to get or just wouldn't fall to us. And now we're going to kind of skip
Just
over
hope
where
they
all the
fall.
heroes are that we're going to talk about tomorrow or on Monday, sorry. And we're going to talk guys that I feel like are reaches but maybe better fits that the Avalanche could go for. And the first one of those is Tyson Forster. This is a guy a little bit high risk and again a little bit of a reach. This guy feels like a guy who should go in the mid 30s, but
Yeah.
I like his shot quite a bit, and I feel like he has a good future in the NHL, maybe even as a power play specialist. I actually have him compared
think
to
that's
Mike Hoffman.
Okay.
Mm.
I was thinking about that. I didn't really even know who to make a comparison with him for. I was thinking maybe like a William Carlson type guy. Um, this was like the one comparison that I had no idea what to do. His range was anywhere from 15 to 36, but I got to be honest, he was my last ranked guy on this list. I think his skating needs a lot of help.
That is exactly why he's probably not going to be a first round pick unless someone does love that shot enough to take the reach.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. His stride is an issue, but this guy led his team in points by it looks like 33 points. He was the leading scorer on his team. So he definitely has that offensive ability. But yeah, that skating is definitely an issue.
Yeah, it is. Very, very good shot though, and I do think that he ends up being kind of a power play specialist. Kind of takes that light Alex Ovechkin type of role, setting up in the high slot and looking for one timers because he does have that ability. A shot that will translate to the NHL. It's just whether or not it translates to a high end prospect type of guy.
We got a comment in the chat here from Everything Hockey saying like the other piece we're missing is a Matt Martin type player. I feel that to an extent. I also feel like if you are going to get that player, that is not a guy you're looking for in the first round. And in our system, I think Matt Steinberg could maybe pull that off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we already have that kind of role filled right now with Matt Calvert. So I'm not really too worried about drafting somebody
maybe a little
to that
more
position
goony.
Per se.
But even that, I feel like
and I would say if we draft Zari, then we have that good bottom six player that would be solid.
I don't think that
and that would be
the NHL is
pick.
somewhat moving up way from the classic. The Avs had Cody McLeod forever, and they're moving more and more away from that kind of player and more towards a Matt Calvert type or a Connor Zary type. So I definitely think it is something the Avs could get better at, but it's not something they're going to be looking for in the first round.
If we were to look for someone in the first round like that, it would be kind of like a Matt Tkachuk type of guy.
That would be great to have.
Yeah. And that would be, and that there's a reason that they go in the top 10.
Yeah, on a regular basis. So if everyone who thinks they can find their Brad Marchand is going to take them as soon as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just don't love this prospect. I'd be kind of disappointed if we came out with Tyson Forster, but yeah, it definitely would. As would the next couple of guys that we're going to be talking about, to be honest.
Let's do the forward before the defenseman. Ridley Greig, another more versatile kind of guy. He just feels kind of blah to me. If you took him in the second round, I'd be like, all right, that's pretty good. At 25, I could see why he would have some appeal to Colorado. There's just not enough there for me to be on board for taking this guy in the first round.
Oh yeah. Billy, going back to those rankings, he was ranked anywhere from 24 to 83. Yeah. So that's how indecisive these like high end, scouters, or is that what you call it? Scouters? Scouts. Oh my goodness. Yes. I had a brain fart for a second, but that's how kind of indecisive these scouts kind of feel about Ridley Greig. Being that his top end ranking was 24, I think that'd be a crazy reach for the Avs, but he does have a really nice work ethic, and I do like him more than Tyson Forster. Kind of a guy that the Avs, look at a little bit, but not, in my opinion, not in the first round. I think a pretty nice comparison for him could be a Matt Calvert. So if we're talking about, if we're talking about the guy that you want to pick up to be that Matt Martin type of guy, then this is a guy that you could look at, but not until the second round.
My comparison for him as far as just play style, I see a little bit of Braden Shen. I don't think he's that high quality is the problem. This feels a little bit like you really wanted Connor Zary and he wasn't there, so you went with the bargain brand version, and that was Ridley Greig.
Yeah. Not in love with this prospect. He was 6th on my list. I do like him better than Tyson Forster, just because of his consistency, but I don't know. these guys like are. If we pick any of these three guys, it's not going to blow my
Yeah.
socks off.
And all right, so the last one, I would not hate this pick, even though it is a reach, and that's Justin Barron. He does just enough that, if we're talking about him, we're probably assuming Caden Gooley and Brendan Schneider are gone. So he's probably the best defenseman left on the board as far as fitting the Avalanche's skill set. And I do think he has the potential to be a second pairing defenseman, and he could be a reasonably safe guy to take for a third pairing defenseman. So I would not hate a Justin Barron pick. If all the guys we've talked about before are gone, a lot of the Euros we're going to talk about tomorrow are gone, the board just didn't break Colorado's way, I would not be upset to see Justin Barron as the pick.
Yeah, this guy doesn't blow my socks off either, like you said. But he was a pretty solid defenseman on a pretty middle of the road to bad Mooseheads team. So he proved himself. I wouldn't be mad with this pick either, but I would not be necessarily happy.
Wouldn't be excited about it.
I'm kind of in the same boat with you guys. He was ranked 23rd to 71, so it's kind of interesting. The first four guys that we talked about are maybe a little bit ahead of the Avs range, and then these last two are kind of, probably reaches for the Avs. And then it's my least favorite guy on this entire list is probably the guy that's right in our range with Tyson Forster. Justin Barron, like you guys just said, definitely not going to blow your socks off or anything, but he wouldn't be the worst pick of all time. He is a nice skater, has a pretty decent shot, and can produce some offense from the D line, and he does have that Mooseheads, connection. So I don't know. He's just not my favorite. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens with these CHL guys.
As far as a player comparison, I don't think this is obviously a stylistic one and not his potential. But I do think he has a little Charlie McAvoy to his game. I think he plays that style a little bit. I would like to see him... If the Avalanche trade back, this is one I could see. This could be the Avalanche were sitting at 25, traded back into a pick in the 30s and a pick in the 40s, and then they went with Justin Barron with one of those picks.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of the only way that I'd be happy with these last three guys. I would be content, with Justin Barron, maybe Ridley Greig, but yeah, that's kind of what we're getting in with these CHL guys. They're very top heavy, especially middle of the first round, but there's not a whole lot of depth once it comes to the bottom of the first round. So that's why our episode on Monday will be a little bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think the Euros are where it's at, especially where the Avalanche are picking, and the ones that aren't are probably USHL and NCAA kids that I think have a good chance to end up in Colorado. I would be pretty surprised to see a CHL kid end up in Colorado, unless someone just fell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, I would agree with that as well. Yeah, by the time our next episode airs, I also wouldn't be surprised to see the Avs not even have a first round pick.
Which will be interesting.
Keep throwing that into the universe.
We might have to remodel what that episode is going to look like.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but that would be kind of exciting, and I'm just throwing that out into the universe. That Zach makes a move, and our first round pick is gone.
Definitely a possibility.
But that's just me.
All right, so before we get out of here, anything else you guys want to talk about with these CHL kids?
No, nothing really from me. It's going to be interesting to see where they fall.
I personally cannot wait for Monday because my two draft crushes are guys we're going to be talking about in Rodion Amarov and Noel Gunler. So there's a little teaser for you viewers. If you're still in that live chat, go ahead, hit that like button for us. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Just help us grow in any way you can. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, come subscribe to the channel. You can watch us live. Or, just keep doing what you're doing. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast, whether that's iTunes or Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I'm losing my talking ability here at the end, but that's all right. You can find us anywhere. And we'll go ahead and see you in our next episode.